There are those who believe that pursuing the UFO question may have cost physicist Dr. James McDonald his career, and perhaps more.
Dr. James McDonald was a good example of what ridicule can do to people who are involved with UFO research, especially they have credentials. Devoted a good part of his life to investigating UFO reports, sightings, writing them up, speaking at scientific and non-scientific groups all over the country and in different parts of the world.
Another thing that's common all over the world is the scoffing and ridicule from official sources, from my fellow scientists, largely, well, almost entirely.
He was respected by UFO researchers, but his peers sort of looked askance at what he was doing. When he was a witness or giving testimony at congressional hearings on what the SST, the supersonic transport, might do to the ozone layer, one of the congressmen brought up the fact that he was interested in UFOs and researching UFOs, and sort of made a fool out of this very brilliant man.
You have been highly critical of your own government's attitude towards UFOs.
Indeed I have, yes. I've taken a very good look at the American official investigation program, Project Blue Book, run by the Air Force, and I have quite unequivocally described it to scientific colleagues back in the States as superficial and incompetent.
Why has the government taken this attitude, in your opinion?
It's not a brief story, but it goes back to 1953 when a CIA-involved investigation was held. As a result of the extremely heavy wave of sightings in 1952, the CIA and Air Force became so concerned over the sheer number of reports that were tying up American intelligence channels that they wanted to get this signal out of the system, asked the Air Force, the CIA asked the Air Force for a debunking policy. The literal wording was to debunk the flying saucers, to decrease public interest in the UFOs. Regulations were promulgated very shortly that made it a crime punishable with, I think it's $10,000 fine and or 10 years in prison to release any information at airbase level on UFOs. And as a result of that, in a sequence of steady downgrading, the whole problem has been essentially lost from scientific sight in the U.S., and nothing resembling any scientific investigation has been going on in the past 15 years.
Has this been typical of the attitude of most world governments?
As nearly as I can tell, yes. There seems to be quite surprising similarity between the official Russian, British, Australian, Canadian, American, French, Italian pronouncements. They all seem to take the view that there's nothing to it, that it's a lot of nonsense, that people see things, and that it is not a real scientific problem at all, and I most heartily disagree with that.
You have been as far as the United Nations with this problem.
Yes, about 2-3 weeks ago, on the 7th of this month, of June, nearly a month ago now, I spoke to the Outer Space Affairs Group in the United Nations, urging immediate UN action on this problem. It seems to me that the UN is one of the best places to tackle the the global aspects of the UFO problem, and all evidence now points to its being a truly global phenomenon.
U Thant made a statement at the time.
I didn't get to see U Thant. That was a busy day, June 7th. In fact, I had a date to see him at 4 o'clock, and if there was any 1 hour that was the peak of the Mideast crisis, 4 o'clock was it. So I unfortunately didn't get to see U Thant. But quite recently, a few days ago, I got a phone call from San Francisco pointing out that he had made a statement to Drew Pearson, an American columnist, that aside from the Vietnamese War, the UFO problem is the greatest international problem. And I sent him a wire strongly endorsing his position, but disagreeing with him to the extent of saying that I believe it's the most important international problem.
Why?
We have in the UFO problem a very strange situation. Here for 20 years plus, essentially similar phenomena have been reported all over the world, large numbers in the U.S., officialdom ignoring them, Air Forces ignoring them, and yet apparently a steady increase in the numbers of reliable reports from people in all walks of life seeing these objects that are not products of our technology, that are not meteorological astronomical phenomena, hovering at low altitude, increasing numbers in urban areas, and collectively we don't know what's going on. That's an extremely unwise situation, no matter how you view it. We do not know what is involved in this problem. There are no strong indications of anything resembling hostility. I see some faint indications of hazard and danger, but in general, to have this possibility that the world is under something resembling reconnaissance, possibly from some extraterrestrial source, and to go on about our petty ways collectively doesn't seem to me to be a wise situation. So I'm trying to get scientists and governmental agencies to take a look at this at a highly accelerated pace. Looked at their files, interviewed now about 400 or 500 witnesses, have been at it a couple of years, and I am one scientist who has been forced farther and farther to the position that the extraterrestrial hypothesis, but I underscore that word hypothesis, is the most probable hypothesis. I'm ready to throw it over when I see something that categorically rules it out, but this is my position. We've only had something like 10 or 12 hours to study these many pages, but it began to hit me that Dr. Condon has apparently not read his own material very carefully. And that would, again, I'm afraid, be consistent with his general remoteness from what really went on in the project. I say that because when we tallied first of all, the 59 major cases numbered and identified in the report, we found that the percentage of unexplained cases with which the Condon Committee is left at the end of their scrutiny is 5 to 6 times larger than the percentage of unexplains that Project Blue Book, Air Force Project Blue Book, has been talking about for the last 10 years. They have said 1 to 2, 3%. The number has varied from year to year, Project Blue Book. Of the 59 cases, a fraction of about 1/6 are unexplained in this sample. Furthermore, in a sample of 35 that's in another part of the report, Gordon Thayer, a very competent radar propagation and optics man, has gone through, 20% of those cases are unexplained. So here we have a strange situation of the Air Force going along saying for 15 or so years that the unexplained percentage is only 1 or 2%. My own view of the problem is that it ought to be about 25 or 30% when you look at the Air Force cases. But giving Dr. Condon this assignment, and he goes through the whole thing, and you do an actual tabulation, which he doesn't seem to have done, and you find his percentage of unexplained is 5 to 6 times larger than the Air Force. And yet, what is his principal recommendation? The principal recommendation that Dr. Condon has come through with is there's nothing of scientific interest that warrants further attention on the part of the federal government here in any major way. He recommends dropping the whole problem. I think that's an important point.
No one can say with certainty what it was that finally broke James McDonald's spirit. But the ridicule he endured for taking UFOs seriously cannot have helped him in his struggle with his own personal demons. In the early morning of June 13th, 1971, Dr. James McDonald walked into the Arizona desert. An hour before dawn, he put a gun to his head and ended his life. Dr. James McDonald, a ghostly presence who stands at the door to the UFO mystery, greeting us with this reminder: beware all those who enter here.